Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys. Welcome to today's. Today we'll be talking on the introduction to programming. This is for cloud engineering. So, guys, please go ahead and drop a message on your Discord room, tagging at everyone so that everybody can join this particular class. It's very important that they are here because this is the first class. This is an introductory class, right? So we need to do that. So go ahead. So while we're waiting for our instructor, he'll be here shortly. Go ahead and follow us on YouTube, on Twitch, as well as our social media handles because it's very important you do that. Reason is that if you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you get to be notified when we have classes so that you can easily join your class and then you don't forget about your classes. And also note these videos are saved on they are also saved on okay. So yeah, we have Mav here. Hello Mav.
Yeah, hi Amaka. Sorry, can you hear me? There's this background noise coming in. I don't know where it's coming from.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I said that there's a background noise. I think it's coming from I think your end. Maybe you can just verify that, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, no problem. So at the countdown, then you can take over the class from there.
All right, thank you. Yeah, sure. All right.
Everyone, we have Mav on the call.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amaka. So I think I can take over from here, right? Yeah. Okay, so hi guys. We're going to be looking at this is our first cloud class, of course, and I'm going to just give you like a very basic fundamental of what you're going to be learning, what we're going to be covering in the cloud training, and then we'll go about learning a little bit of Python. I would also give you the reason why we are going to be using Python for our course. I've gotten a lot of questions, around why we decided to go with, Python. Why not Go? Why not Bash? So we have a bunch of scripting and programming languages out there. But so I'll give you a reason why we're going with Python as well as what we are meant to do, as cloud engineers. I believe some of you might still have that question. Some of us might have also done our research already. But yeah, I mean, we'll, we'll just go ahead and talk about that as well. All right. So just to know if you guys are with me, please go ahead and drop a message in the chat. Just drop a message in the chat. Let me see some feedback from you. I can see 12 people watching from YouTube. I don't know how many people are watching from Twitch. Go ahead and drop a message in the chat. Okay. All right. Okay. So hi, Rufiat. Okay, so you're watching from Twitch. All right. So yeah, I think I just got a feedback from there. Let's go ahead and I hope you guys can drop messages in the chats. That's how you basically ask questions, right? I believe you definitely have some questions. Um, yeah, so please do well to drop messages in the chat. Nice. I will go ahead and yeah, open up my drawing pad. First of all, we'll be doing some simple diagrams as we learn along. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. Yeah. Good afternoon. Okay. Well done, Tosin, Lola, and Haywood. Okay, so let's talk about the concept of cloud engineering. Let's start from there. What are you going to be doing as a cloud engineer? What exactly is cloud engineering even? Okay, so one thing I want to make you understand is the idea of cloud engineering basically refers to the practice of designing, building, and managing cloud infrastructures and services. All right. So as a cloud engineer, you are responsible for basically creating and maintaining um, cloud-based applications, right? Cloud-based solutions, right? These solutions have to be secure, they have to be scalable, they have to be reliable, um, and they have to, of course, meet the business and organization requirements. So you are basically responsible for that. So let me give you a very simple, a very simple description here. So let's assume you have a large organization. Okay, you have a large organization, and you're basically going to have various stakeholders. Okay, so at the top somewhere here, maybe you have like the executives. All right, so you have like the executives, then right here you have developers. So let's say you have developers. Okay, so I'll just say dev. Now, ideally, you are also a developer, right? You're a cloud developer. You work with the dev team, right? If you want to look at it from a broader concept, right? You work with the dev team. You have the sales team. Okay, so you have the sales team, or sometimes we also refer to them as operations guys. But let's just say we have the sales and operations. Okay, so there are basically two teams in most organizations. There are basically two teams that tend to work hand in hand. If you work in a startup, then you are going to be working as a cloud as a cloud engineer. If you work in a startup, you're going to find yourself. Let's do a simple text. As a cloud engineer, you're going to find yourself working hand in hand with DevOps, right? DevOps is basically in charge of, being the middleman between operations and development, right? Basically moving, the solutions from the development environments, channeling them through pipelines, GitHub and some other services to the cloud. So when we say the cloud, we're referring to platforms like AWS. We're referring to platforms like, these are basically hosted clouds, right? Platforms like Azure, platforms like GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform. We also have some, minor, I would say, smaller clouds, right? DigitalOcean. We have Linode, right? We have some other, smaller platforms, but the three major, very popular platforms: GCP, Azure, and AWS, right? Which is Amazon Web Services. Okay. Now, these platforms are owned by, various companies. So, for example, we have AWS owned by Amazon, right? We have Azure owned by Microsoft, and we also have GCP, which is the Google Cloud Platform. Obviously, GCP owned by Google. All right. So as a cloud engineer, you are probably going to be working with one of these. We have some others, so it's not like you must work with one of these. We have, Red Hat Cloud. We have a bunch of cloud platforms as well. Alibaba Cloud. Okay. But I want you to understand one thing. Most of your practical or your hands-on experience is going to be on a cloud platform, right? As well as interacting with the development team, the DevOps guys, because before you receive those applications, your job is primarily to set up those services, right? The services that will be used to manage those solutions you are deploying, and the DevOps guys will be channeling those code base or those raw, basically the code files, the source files. They would channel those source files to you. So you will do a lot of configuration and management on the cloud, and these guys will do a bunch of basically pipeline and workflow setup, right? Automations and stuff like that. Now, most times you might find yourself doing some of the things that the DevOps guys are also meant to do, which means you need to at least understand some fundamentals of DevOps, right? You don't necessarily need to go into the details, but you should be able to understand the things happening in the DevOps world. while the DevOps world is also putting some effort to understand the things happening in the cloud world. All right. So just understand that cloud and DevOps, you are basically going to work, a lot with these guys. And sometimes even in startups, you basically, would probably take on the role of both. Okay. But yeah, let's talk about, why we choose to learn Python. One of the major reasons is because we understand that as a cloud engineer, you're most times going to be, deploying resources, right? Setting up resources in the cloud. You want to be able to test run what you're doing. You want to be able to, try out some practicals. Maybe you want to deploy like a Python application, or you want to deploy some kind of application. It makes sense. It makes sense that you understand, what you are, what it makes sense that you understand what you expect to get at times from developers. So which means if you learn how to code, at least the basics, if you are able to write basic scripts for yourself, you're able to write basic code base, right, to try out your experiments. That would actually make a lot of sense, right? And Python is, a very simple. It's robust, but of course very simple to also approach as a beginner. If you're a beginner on this training, and you want to get into programming, or you want to get into cloud or DevOps or any field when it comes to tech, I think Python is something you'll definitely come by, right? You'll definitely come across it, sometime, somewhere. So it's a good idea to at least understand, the fundamentals of this language. Um, yeah, so it's very versatile. You have a lot of libraries, a lot of materials out there in the public to learn from, and yeah, so that's what we'll be covering. So some vital things to look out for is the fact that Python is versatile. Python is readable, right? When it comes to readability, it's amazing. It's easy to understand the rules of programming with Python. It's easy to get started with Python. Basically, you're going to be using it for like automation, scripting. It has a rich ecosystem of libraries, right? And you would also use it for something we refer to as infrastructure as code, which we are going to talk about, sometime when we are done learning Python. You're going to be writing scripts to basically deploy these applications without necessarily doing those things, on the cloud platform, right? Um, yeah, and you definitely have even more career opportunities if you are able to code in Python as well, rather than just understanding the infrastructure or the platform, for these third-party platforms. When you have that programming skill attached to what you know, I think you basically have more career opportunities. And yeah, you'll be able to integrate with DevOps, as I said earlier, because most of these tools from the DevOps end are also going to be running on Bash or Python. Okay, and yeah. So that is it. Let's talk about Python programming itself. So we shared a material with you. I don't know how many of you have seen that, but we actually shared something with you. I'm going to put that up on my screen as well. So it's called Python for Starters. All right. So let me go ahead and share my browser screen. Okay, I'm going to be taking some questions as well. Someone is asking how long is the class? If you are referring to this specific class, it's going to be just an hour. Okay. Yeah, then some materials will be shared with you afterwards. So I'm currently sharing a different screen here. And what you're seeing here is the Python for Starters. You might have seen this from my website, right? It's a very simple, it's something I put together for people trying to get started with Python. Python is actually very robust, as I said earlier. But if you want to go into cloud, it's a good idea to learn the major things that you might need to know, at least as a starter. Okay, so you don't get into like this YouTube playlist tutorial hell. Okay, so you have some basic things that you can learn. You can start with this. If you're scared of programming, trust me. I think with the community here at Top Universe, you don't have a problem when it comes to practicing because you have people to practice with. Okay, and you have materials. You can always reach out to the moderators or other folks in your channel, your category. You can ask questions and more materials will also be shared with you. and we'll try as much as possible to make it easy to, to follow through. All right. So let's just jump into the first part here. We have Python for starters. So here you basically get like a description of, what this book is meant to do, right? And I would skip the other options here. I would just go straight to introduction to Python. If you follow the material, you would also see the instructions on how to install Python. I am currently using a Mac, not a Windows machine. I believe most of us might be using Windows. So the installation flow on my end might not look exactly, the same as, it would look on your end. Nonetheless, I will go ahead and share my entire screen and basically show you how to download Python. If you're using a Windows machine, go ahead and click on Python installation. Scroll down to the section where you would see, oh yeah, I think it shows, okay, right here. So all you have to do is visit the official Python website. So if you click on this, it's going to take you to the official Python website. I think it's quite better if you just see, yeah, if you see the entire screen actually. All right, much better. So can you guys see my screen very well? Is it bold? Is it clear? Should I zoom in? Please let me know in the chat, okay? And if you're looking at this with your phone, that might not be a very good idea. So it's a good idea if you just use a laptop or something. All right, so this is the Python website, and you can go to the download option here. So just take a look at this. This class is also recorded, so you would also have access to this later on. Go to the download section and click on the option you see. You're going to be seeing download for Windows if you're using a Windows machine. If you're using a Linux machine, I am sure you would also see download for probably your specific distribution, whether you're using Ubuntu, Parrot OS, Red Hat. I'm sure you would get an option, or you probably have to download it from your terminal. But for now, we are simply going to click on this. So when I click on this, you see Python is currently being installed, right? It's currently, downloading. We have not started installation yet. It's currently downloading. If you have a Windows machine, go ahead and try this, so that if you encounter any issue, you can let me know while we're in the session, or you can also try it out later. Okay. So once we are done, I think my picture is kind of covering the screen here, so I'm going to take that off. All right. Okay, so once you're done downloading Python, just go ahead and open that for installation. All right, so this is Python. I already have this installed, by the way, but just go ahead, follow the prompts. Continue, agree to the agreement, and of course, go ahead, click on continue, then click on install. All right, so you can leave the default location, right? Just click on install. This is only going to take 167 megabytes. Yeah, go ahead and click install. After installing this, you can then test it, from your terminal. So when you see me open this, please, this is just a very simple disclaimer here. When you see me open the terminal, you don't have to be scared, right? Let me clear the whole thing first. So you don't have to be scared about, using the terminal. The thing is, you will eventually use the terminal. In fact, I think you can start learning how to do that from now. When you see me use some commands, when you see your instructors use some commands, go ahead and ask questions. What is that for, right? Go ahead and try it out on your end as well. The terminal is basically a way to use your machine without necessarily using the GUI, right? But in this instance, there are some programs or applications that you have to experiment with or run from your terminal, right? So this is my Mac terminal, okay? And on a Windows, you can use the command prompt. So if you're using Windows 10, Windows 11, or even Windows 8, just open your start menu and type CMD, okay? So open your start menu and type CMD. Let me quickly open this up on one end so that I can explain some things there. So if you're using a Windows, right? So just go ahead, open your start menu and simply type in CMD, or you can use PowerShell. So we have two options on a Windows machine, CMD or PowerShell. And I would also show you an alternative. So someone is saying my laptop is dual booted with Linux. So should I still choose Windows option or Linux? Yeah, either of them is fine, right? I would actually prefer, but that's my preference, right? That you go with Linux. Reason being that most of the resources and the compute resources on the cloud that you will use in a real work environment would be Linux. So if you build and learn with Linux, it is easier for you to understand some of most of the things in the cloud. All right. So because sometimes we say it's tough to learn Linux, but it's quite it's better, right? It's worth the investment, the time, when you're learning how to use and basically operate Linux. All right. Okay. So and if you don't have Linux but you want to try it out, yeah, I mean, you can actually download Ubuntu. I would recommend Ubuntu for a start. All right. So if you want to try out Linux, I would recommend Ubuntu. Right. That is the name. Someone can kindly share the link to Ubuntu, to the Ubuntu operating system on the YouTube chat. Okay. If you can, please go ahead and do that. All right. So when you have CMD opened up, go ahead and simply type Python. So let me show you from my terminal right here. This is my terminal. I'm going to just type in Python. Now you can see, we can see I have Python 3.9.6, right? Currently set as default. So I am currently, in my Python environment, okay? So I can write some Python code, which I'll be, showing you how to do shortly. But this is basically a Python code, right? And then we can exit. We can then exit. So we call that the REPL, which is simply, I will talk about that later, but the idea is you can basically, jump into that space and, write some code, some basic code, right? So I just used an example of, printing a very simple text. So I can print my name is Marv. We have my name is Marv as the output. So that is very basic, right? Very, very basic. We'll get to talk more about that shortly. If you cannot see, when you type Python and you get an error, let us know in the chat, or you can simply let us know on Discord, right? Immediately after this session, I'll be on Discord for about an hour, and I'll be there to take questions. Okay, so that is it if you have installed Python. If you already have Python installed, good. If you have not installed it already, go ahead and do that now. Or if you're not using your laptop for this session, you can wait till the end of the session before you install Python. All right, so remember to install the latest version. I have 3.9 because I currently, have a way to switch, across multiple versions. All right, so make sure you install 3.11. Sorry, make sure you install 3.11. Okay, so if you have Python installed now, remember there are so many tutorials out there. There are so many materials on the internet. We are using this because it has been, limited to some of the things you really need to know. When you're done with this, you can of course proceed to, experiment with other things. Remember, we just have 2 weeks to cover this material. So please make sure you practice even outside the call, which is why you have a lot of days, to practice. All right, so we are done with installation. Let's talk about Python variables. Now we are learning programming. I'm going to try as much as possible to explain with diagrams, right? Because I believe it's a better way to explain some of these concepts. If you have questions while we are in the session, please make sure you drop your questions in the chat, all right? Okay, so what exactly is a variable in programming, right? Generally in programming. And I'm going to give an example like this. So let's say you have let's say you have a container, right? Let's say you have a container, and the purpose of this container is, basically to hold something, right? To hold a value, if that's, yeah, that is the best way to say, to hold a value. So this container can actually be a cup. Let's use that as an example. So this container is a cup, and then you have a value somewhere around here. So you have some contents, and let's just call that water or drink. Okay. So the cup basically is going to be something that can hold, the water. Okay. So when I basically put this in here, it means, this is basically a cup representing water, right? So automatically, I'm sure you can relate with me when I say we have, a cup of water, right? So you have a cup of water, meaning the cup is a container. right? And the water right there is the value. Okay, so we can simply say cup equals water. Now, this is just an example, right? It's a silly example, but I know it's also passes information here. So when I say cup equals water, we are saying anywhere you see cup, we are referring to water because this is the container, right? And this is the value, all right? So this is the container. Let me take that down here. So this is the container right here. C, Control V, and this is the value. Okay, so this is the value. All right. So basically, a variable is simply an item that holds a value, right? So it acts as a reference or a pointer to an object or to a value. Now, looking at the definition we have here, we said a variable in Python is a symbolic name that serves as a reference or pointer to an object. All right. So it can serve as a reference or a container to different types of objects. This is just a single type, which we refer to as a string. A string is a collection of characters that basically stay together like this, right? I would explain that better when we get to strings. But basically, what I'm trying to say is this is the container, this is the value. So if you see something like this, just as another example, x equals 50, right? And then you see something like this again. So this is an instruction. We'll talk about that too, but this is an instruction. So if I say print x, whenever you see something like this, we first say x equals 50, and at this point, we're saying print x. Now, this is to tell you that if we're printing x, which is the container, it's going to act as a reference to this value, which means what we expect to see in our results, it's actually going to be 50. Okay? So someone is asking, question, I don't have a laptop, but can I still install and use Python on my phone? Well, there are some tools you can use, right, to learn Python, but I would actually recommend you get a laptop, buy one or borrow one from your friends, for the classes. It's important to use a laptop so you can follow up with what we're doing here, okay? If you want to use your phone, I'm sure back then we used to try Solo Learn. I can actually recommend this app because I know you can learn Python from here, and you can also use their inbuilt app terminal. Okay, yeah, so check it out, Solo Learn. All right. Okay, so we have the variable x, right, and its value is 50. So when we say print x, we're expecting to see 50 as the result. Now that is just an example. I hope this explains, the concept of a variable better to you. Yeah, so let's proceed. So when you follow this material, you can also see some examples, right? Variable equals 1, variable equals 2. You have variable with type hint equals 1. So let me explain what you're seeing here. When we say type hint in Python, what we are basically referring to is the fact that by default, you don't necessarily need to tell Python the type of the variable you are passing, right? It's not necessary, but it's a good idea to also understand, the type and, be able to basically tell Python that this is the type I want to pass. Now, if you don't pass in the right type, or if you later use a different type that is not the same with the type you instructed Python to use, it will not stop your code from running, but it will of course hint you at times that you're using the wrong thing. This is an example. Remember, initially we said x equals 50. Now we can also go ahead and tell Python, instead of saying x equals 50, we can say x with the type of hints, right? So we have different types when it comes to talking about the values, that will pass into variables. We have different types, and some of the types, in Python would range from numbers. So numbers, we have strings. Okay, so that is a string. Let's just say number, string. Yeah, okay. So someone is saying, so this is like TypeScript. Well, as I said earlier, it's not necessary, right? It's optional. Okay. In TypeScript, it is, sort of, you can make it, optional, but basically the point of using TypeScript is that it should be, type safe, which means you want to really include the types. All right. So, but in this case, You can, of course, tell Python the type. It's not compulsory, but I would advise you do it, okay? I would advise you use the type so that other developers can understand what a variable is expecting, okay? So, yeah. So we call this a number. That does not mean you call it number here. When you're coding, you can basically use two types on that number. So which means you can basically use like an int, or you can also use a double, but we'll talk about that shortly, okay? And these two types fall under number. All right. So int is the whole number, of course, right? Such as 50. So you can basically have let's say int. Of course, you can have a double. So let's just say a double. Okay. And yeah. Okay. So you can basically have a whole number here, which is an int, right? And you can also have yeah. So you can also have you can also, yeah, this is float, sorry. So you can have like like 5.5, right? 5.10, right? What you refer to as decimal numbers. And so you can basically use this. We'll get to that. I don't want to make this so complicated. So understand that when we say number, we're referring to whether it's a float, whether it's an integer, like a whole number, it falls on that number. All right. String would give you values such as anything you put in your quotes like this, my name, a sentence, a long sentence, that's a string. All right. We also have, we have some data structures. We'll talk about data structures later, not immediately. All right. So, but note that the most important thing I want you to understand right now is the fact that when you have x equals 50, this is the value, this is the variable. When you indicate the type, all right, you're only telling Python that this is the type I want to use. I know the type I want to use, and I'm not trying to make guessworks here. So, and I also want other developers to be able to realize that this is exactly what I expect here. All right. So we refer to this as a type hint. Okay. So we refer to this as a type hints. All right. Take note of that. We refer to this as a type hint. Okay, good. So let's proceed. I'm going to go back to the material we have here, and someone is asking, in order to declare a variable in Python, we just write the variable name. Yeah, you just write the variable name. You don't have to do let or const or yeah, you don't really have to you don't have to put those keywords like you do in JavaScript or TypeScript or some other languages. You just have to put in the name and put in the value, or you can also put in the type and put in the value later, right? You can declare and initialize later, or you can just declare and initialize on the same line, okay? And this is very important. Some of the variable rules in Python. Make sure to follow these rules. First of all, a variable must start with a letter or an underscore. When you're declaring a variable, so let's declare some examples here. Variable can start with a letter, right? So for example, I can say name equals Mav, right? Oh yeah, so I can say John Joe. Let's have something longer. Okay. So you cannot start with one. You cannot start with any number. All right. You can only start with a letter or an underscore. All right. Don't try to use a special character. I mean, you can only use a letter or an underscore character. And yeah, so it cannot start with a number. A variable can only contain alphanumeric character and underscore. Yeah. Okay. And what else do we have here? So when we say alphanumeric, so for example, you can have like name one, right? Name two, name three, but you cannot have three name. Okay. Three can come after, so name one. All right. And underscore can start, and you can also add like the numbers. Okay. All right. So variables are case sensitive, which means if you have name like this and you have name like this, they are two different things. Okay, they are two different things. So someone is saying, how do it include it? Okay, how do I include it in my path variable? Okay, so I'm suspecting you installed Python, but it says it is not in your path variable. What I think you should do is probably close the terminal first. If you have installed it already, close the terminal and open the terminal again, right? I think that should actually, include it in the new terminal instance. I believe that should work automatically. And I'm sure they must have resolved. Yeah, yeah. Try that first, okay? If it's Sinachi, try that and let us know. All right. There's a longer process of including stuffs in your path variable on Windows, but I don't think you have to do that. All right. So this is it. Yeah. So that is basically how you work with variables. Let's go ahead and try out some example. Now, I have taught you how to install Python and of course test, to see if you have Python, right? So of course you can actually even do the Python version to see the exact version of Python you have, or you can just open the Python, basically open a Python like this in your terminal and try out some examples. So for example, we tried out name equals John Doe, right? So you can go ahead and print name. You see we have John Doe. Okay, so that works. But I also want to give you an alternative. So let's assume you're finding it difficult to use Python most times on your laptop, or you find yourself using multiple devices. You can actually use Python in the web. There are so many ways to use Python in the web. I would recommend two, and I use this tool like every single time. The first one is to use a platform called Google Collab, right? So I'll simply go to collab.research.google.com and I'll share that link in the chat as well. All right, so if you check the chat, you will see that link, collab.research.google.com. So you can basically, create, so we actually call this notebooks, right? You can basically click on the plus here, the plus sign here, you create a new place, you can actually start writing code, right? This is not big enough, so let me zoom in. Okay, so I can simply say name equals John Doe, right? And I can go ahead to basically print name, okay? So yeah, it's actually better you do this in the same line. So let's go ahead and run this. So this is actually running on the web, which means it will not be as fast as what you run offline all the time. Okay, it's actually taking some time to boot up, right? So it would yeah, it would actually print. So as you can see, this is John Doe, right? This is working. So this is one option. But the better option that I use for most of my classes would be Deep Notes, right? So you can try deepnote.com. Deepnote.com is actually, a more straightforward alternative. So all you have to do is create an account, then you sign in. So if you already have like a GitHub or Google account, you can actually use one of them to sign in. I would use my GitHub. All right, so when I sign in with my GitHub, you see I already have an account. I've been playing around with some of my previous classes. So if I click on Python programming, for example, that is something I have created before. So you're going to basically see like, some of the materials in here. All right, so of course the network is a bit dramatic today, but yeah, so this is it. So you see, these are some example Python code we have written in class, and the amazing thing about Deep Notes is, I can basically share with other people, right, directly, just using a link, and yeah, it's been amazing. So you can basically create an account here and start writing code already. All right, so if I click on the code option here, I can simply write my code here. I can say name equals John Doe, just like we did earlier. I can simply say print name. So for this example, you don't necessarily need to have Python installed, but it is not as fast as what you would use on your laptop, right? Locally, depending on what you're trying to do actually. Okay, so someone said I have Jupyter Notebook installed. Amazing. So you can use Jupyter Notebook, you can use Jupyter Lab. That works. I mean, this is exactly the same functionality with Jupyter Notebook, but hosted in such a way that you can access via a URL and you don't have to host your own Jupyter Notebook. All right. So nice one, Kefox. Nice one. All right, so you can use this, you can use the Collab, or you can use any other option you have. Most times, I would also recommend you use what you have natively, right? Because that would be a good way to, of course, learn how to interact with, your file, your computer, and connect, write applications or write, scripts that would connect with other part of your system. So, yeah. So this is an alternative for those of you that might not have access to a computer. You can basically use this tool. All right. REPL IT is good. Amazing. Yeah, that's very correct. As a matter of fact, I totally forgot. We have some tools like that. REPL IT. I think there's one called Glitch. I don't know if it does Python, but you can check it out. We have a code sandbox, right? We have what else? We have a bunch of tools out there. So check them out. Very amazing set of tools. Okay. Yeah. So let's proceed to the next thing here, which is Python data types. Okay, so a data type describes a set of possible values and operations that can be performed on a variable. All right, so in Python, a data type is a category of a category for values. Okay, and every value in Python has a data type, which determines the kind of operations that can be performed on that value. Okay, so let us look at the data types we have here. So as I mentioned earlier, we have numbers, right? And numbers, would cut across integers, floats, complex numbers. And yeah, then we also have strings, all right? We have lists. Now, when it comes to lists, tuples, sets, dictionaries, I would basically classify this as, under data structures, which we'll get to. But of course, they are also describing at a very, someone is saying, can I use Mac for Python? Yeah, you can use Mac, Windows, Linux, any operating system. All right. So, yeah, so, but of course, we have numbers, we have strings, lists, tuples, sets, dictionaries, and these guys here are primarily, what you would learn in data structures when we get to data structures. Right. Okay, so we can actually read through, but I don't want to spend too much time reading through. I'm sure you already have the link, so you can open it up on your end, and you can simply go through this. But just to give you like a summary, a number is an example of what I have shown. Where is that screen? Right here. So this is a number, okay? This is a string, all right? And yeah, so when it comes to a list is basically an ordered collection of values that can be any type of data. Okay, so any data type. So I can show you an example. Imagine you say, let's say, um, probably market lists, right? That is the variable, okay, and the value is now a list of items. So for someone like me, I might actually put in things like, let's say floating berries, okay, and I hope I spelled that correctly. For those of you that are Nigerians on this call, you would understand me perfectly. So, floating berries, we can have, what do you call that? I think groceries. All right, and you can have any other item. So let's say you want to basically you want to basically add some fruits. So we can also add like oranges. I don't know the relationship with the others, but so you have a list of items, right? And you can also include a number, right? So you can basically include a list of different types of items in a list. Okay, so this is a list and it holds one, two, three, and four. Four items. We'll get to talk about lists, and you will also learn a couple of things about this kind of lists. Okay, so now please, Rufiato, these are just like values, right? These are just values that we're trying to add into our list, right? As an example. We'll talk about that in detail shortly. All right. Tuples are also similar to lists, but it's immutable. So when we say something is immutable, it means that the values that you have added into a tuple cannot be modified. All right. So in Python, you can choose to say I want to create a list of items, but I don't want to I don't want to be able to modify these items after creating them. You can use a tuple for that, right? A set. A set is an unordered collection of unique values, which means the items inside a set has to be unique. You cannot have so let me show you what that is. So basically, if you have like So let's say you have like Mav, and you have like Moses. These are names, right? So you have like a set of names. Okay, so let's just say set of names. All right, let's use an underscore for this. So you have set of names. You cannot have Moses twice in a set, right? It's going to automatically take off one item because it expects every single item in here to be unique, and it does not expect to have like duplicates. All right, so that's exactly what it's set to do for you. And yeah, then we have dictionaries. So a dictionary is basically a way to hold a collection of key value pairs, right? So let me show you an example here, right? So we can have a dictionary looking like this. So we can have like I'm just going to add some name. So we can have name as Mav. We can have like age as maybe 70, right? So this is a dictionary. You basically have key value pairs. So the key right here is the name, right? It signifies that, okay, I have a value somewhere and this is the value map, right? So when you see the name, if I say set of names dot, sorry, if I say dictionary, so DICT, dictionary dot name, we're getting marvelous. If I say dictionary dot age, we're getting 70. So we have key value pairs, and there are times where this is going to come very handy. So you would see the benefits of understanding these things or these data structures in details. All right. So this is a list. There's a set. There's a dictionary, and you can also have a tuple. The tuple is just a list, but you cannot alter the values after you've created them. All right. So dictionary is like an object. Yeah, it's like an object. I think Rufiato, you're coming from a JavaScript background or a TypeScript background. So dictionaries are like objects, like JavaScript objects. They are similar, but of course they have some discrepancies. So we'll get to talk about that in the future. All right. So let's quickly jump into data structures. Let's understand some of the data structures. I have mentioned them already: list, tuples, dictionaries, sets, and of course a string is also a data structure. But let's focus on these options for now. Before we start playing around with the details of these data types and data structures, please make sure to read through, right? Don't skip like the way I'm skipping. Okay, make sure to uh, skip through. So someone is saying, does the different types of breaks signify anything? What do you? Okay, you mean the brackets? Oh yeah. Okay, so if you mean the brackets, yes, it actually signifies different things. So when you're working with lists, you work with a square bracket. All right. So you can have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's a list. All right. Let's call this list one. All right. So yes, for lists you use this. When you're working with tuples, you basically use this. Okay. So this is let's call this tuple one. All right. When you're working with tuples, you use this, which is the regular open and close brackets. All right. When you're working with sets, you use this. This is the braces, right? So this is the braces or your curly brackets. And when you're working with a dictionary, you also use braces, but remember that your dictionary should have like a key value pair, okay? So let's call this the key and let's call this the value. All right. So I hope that answers your question. That's a very nice question. So thank you very much, Mawumi. Thank you. All right, so on to the next, and yeah, which is of course the data structures. I'm going to show you an example. So we're going to simply write a basic Python code, right? We're going to write a Python code that can basically add two numbers. Quite simple, straightforward. Please follow up with the example I'm going to show you here, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. So I'm going to first, let's leave let's leave that environment. Let's start by creating a Python file on our desktop. You can do that manually on a Windows machine by simply right-clicking and clicking on a new file, right, on a Windows, right? On my Mac, the best way I can create this is to use my terminal. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to say touch main.py or app.py. All right, so just to explain something here, One thing I did not cover is, talking about how to set up your browser, because I believe you already have that covered. That is why you are with me on the call in the first place. And the text editor you might be using, in class, right? If you're not using the online platforms like Repl IT, as someone has mentioned earlier, you probably want to use VS Code. So VS Code is, when it comes to like the text editor space right now, I would say the most popular, right? So go ahead and download VS Code. It has a lot of extensions. All you have to do is simply go to code.visualstudio.com. I'm going to share the link in the chat again. So I don't think I've shared it before, have I? I don't think so. All right, so I have it in the terminal. I have it in the chat. Go ahead and yeah, click on the link from the chat there. So that is code.visualstudio.com. I am currently using a Mac, so I would simply click on download for Mac, right? Or if you're using a Windows machine or a Linux, Debian for, basically Debian distribution, the DEB, like Ubuntu, right? ROPM, I'm sure that can run on a Red Hat machine. I think so. Or yeah, so go ahead and download this. But for a MacBook, click on this. Windows, click on this. So I already have this installed. I don't have to install this again, right? And because of that, I'm going to be using um, VS Code, since I already have that installed. There are so many alternatives, by the way. If you prefer using some other alternatives, feel free to use that, okay? Most times I prefer using this option here because it's super fast for me. But since most of you might be familiar with VS Code, let's just go ahead and use VS Code for this example. Oh, okay. So I think I installed it, but I probably don't use it most times. So I am simply going to let's open my desktop first of all. And I'm simply going to drag this file in here. So that is VS Code. I got that error because I have not installed the code command in my path, which is pretty much very simple to do. But I probably haven't used VS Code on this machine for a very long time. So let's have that open up in VS Code. And all right, so I think this is opening for the first time. Yeah, that was pretty slow. Okay. All right, so I have Visual Studio Code opened up. I personally would always prefer to use some other text editors like TextMate, Z, or even Lapsy. But yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea. Using VS Code is cool, right? It's amazing. As a matter of fact, it's very popular out there. Um, yeah. So let's go ahead and zoom in on this one. And we're going to, basically write a simple code base here. So I'm going to have number one equals, let's call this, let's say 50. I'll have number two equals 10. And I'm going to say print number one plus number two, just like this. So basically, I have number one, which is the variable, and this is the value 50. Number two, the variable, and this is the value 10. But we'll say print number one plus number two. Of course, we expect to have 60, right? So in order to run this, you can use the play button here, or you can simply open up the terminal first. So you can go to View, right? And simply, open up the terminal. So let's click on the terminal here. There's a command for that, a shortcut. The Windows shortcut will be different. This is the Mac shortcut. When I click on terminal, it's going to pull up my terminal right here. And I can basically run this by using the Python command. So in order to run this, you have to enter the Python command and then, call the name of the file. You must make sure that you are in the location, right, within your terminal. So if you look at this right now, I am not on my desktop, right? In the terminal, I am not on my desktop. So I'm going to first move down to the desktop, right, by using the cd command, which is simply going to change my directory, okay? Cd means change directory, and I'm changing my directory to desktop, all right? So forget about the complexities, these are very basic stuff when you do one or two examples. This video is recorded directly on YouTube, so you're going to get the video immediately after the class. All right, so let's go ahead and say Python app.py, which is, the Python file, right? If I run this, you see we have 60, okay? This is a very simple example, and in our next class, we're going to go into more details. Show more examples. We don't want to go beyond the time for the class today. If you have any questions, I will spend 5 minutes taking questions here, and I would meet you on Discord after 5 minutes to take another round of questions, probably for the next 30 minutes. Okay. Yeah. So go ahead and ask your questions. Drop them in the chat. Drop them in the chat. Thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah. So 5 minutes, and I'll be waiting for your questions in the chat. All right. Okay. All right, so I can see we have a question already. Someone is asking, would there be attendance? I believe there should be attendance. Someone must have shared the attendance. Let me quickly check the chat. Please check the chat if you are seeing any attendance in the chat. Kindly check. Make sure you wait on the call and take the attendance first before you leave. Okay. Make sure you wait and put in your name in the attendance. It's very important. All right. All right. So, message reaching me is that the attendance will be shared shortly. All right. So please hold on for a second or two. I think Maka is trying to share it already with you guys on the channel. So yeah, please just stay in the channel. Okay. So someone is asking, please, I would suggest for a more all-inclusive class. Please tell us ahead all the tools needed to be installed for a smooth class. Yeah, I mean, that's the purpose of this class as well, right? Telling you on Discord does not mean every other person can install this. Okay. And whatever session we have here is recorded, as we have said earlier. So if you are not able to follow up, go ahead and follow up with the recording. Okay. And you have the Discord channel to ask any questions you want to ask, and you'll get response from there. So yeah, I think that's the way to go. All right, Jerry. Okay, so please let's be patient. Amaka will share the attendance with us shortly. All right, so go ahead and fill the attendance. Thank you very much for joining the session, and do have a wonderful day ahead. Yeah, bye guys. I'll see you on Discord.